Now, yesterday we had breaking news on right during our show about Hillary Clinton and her emails. You talked to Stuart Varney about that being a lack of judgment. I think it's also has something to do with arrogance. But let's talk about foreign policy for a moment, because she was Secretary of State. Sure. I don't think our standing in the world went up. Later on, of course, we had the Iran nuke deal. What are some of the things that you would do different than the Obama administration, particularly with Hillary Clinton perhaps being the president?
Well, you know, you look at her reset, for instance, in Russia. What good did that do? We have to recognize that Putin has expansionist ideals. You know, he invaded Georgia in 2008, hasn't left, Crimea in 2013, eastern Ukraine. And he would expand even further, but he's having economic problems because of the decreased price of oil. That's his one-horse show, energy. We have lots of energy. So, you know, we need to change the function of our EPA from suppressing our energy production to working with business, industry, and academia to find the cleanest, most environmentally friendly way to exploit it.
Would you push for the exporting of crude oil, natural gas?
Absolutely. Those archaic
Keystone
energy
pipeline?
Exportation things, we need to get rid of those. Yes, the Keystone pipeline. Absolutely. And we have the ability to liquefy natural gas now. Look what we can do with that. But I'll give you something that's really radical. You know, Anbar and the Akash oil fields in Iraq, they are under the control of ISIS right now. We can wipe them out in 2 seconds. Take that, utilize...
When you say wipe them out, though, would that involve American boots on the ground, a greater involvement in what's going on there? Because my niece came over the house last weekend, and she thought you were a warmonger. Now, she's a millennial, and I you know, listen, I agree. When we go to war, I think these wars have been too politically correct, and that's why we don't win them anymore. But you're saying we should put some boots in the ground and just get rid of ISIS once and for all?
I'll tell you what, you get rid of them, and then you don't have to keep fighting. It's a war of attrition otherwise. We have what we need to get rid of them, not to contain them, but to get rid of them.
Why do you think we don't?
Well, I can't get inside the president's head. I can't quite figure out why he kind of thinks, we just leave them alone, they'll be okay. I don't know why he thinks that when all indications are to the contrary.
It feels like all of those things have one common thread. What you talked about with Putin, ISIS, and let me just throw the recent Iran nuke deal, that this administration has been so eager to please people outside of this country, even people who are enemies, who have pledged our demise. They're so eager to be seen as good global citizens. Exactly. I mean, isn't that the wrong way to start off a policy?
Totally the wrong way. And look what we've done to our military. We've decimated our military. The weaker we are, the more adventurism we're going to see from everybody else. Peace comes through strength. We have to understand. We've learned that before. Why did we forget that?
Dr. Carson, let me ask, and we've got a minute left in this segment. Everyone had their gotcha moment during the debates. Yours was about Alan Greenspan, and you weren't sure exactly what his job was. Now, I love your response with respect to having a brain. Since you've been in this process, what are some of the things that you have learned that you may have had the wrong assumptions about, let's say 6 months ago, a year ago, because your brain must be moving a million miles an hour with this whole process?
Well, there's no question, you know, that a lot of times, particularly early on, when somebody would ask a question, I would assume that I knew what they were talking about when I didn't, or I'd go off on some tangent. I don't do that anymore. I'm very, very analytical now. I see the question coming 6 miles away, and so I think you probably won't find very many of those things anymore.
So you're not learning on the job, you're learning before the job.
Absolutely.
Well, listen, I mean, ultimately that's the way it has to be. Have you thought then, have you gone so far to think then how your relationship would be with the Federal Reserve? Who would you put in key positions right now, or is it too early for that?
Well, I've thought a lot about the Federal Reserve. You know, I think it has done a little bit of overreaching, but I'm not saying we need to get rid of it, as some people are saying, because right now, you know, they're keeping the interest rate suppressed, which is not helpful to the average American, by the way.
Why not? Because that's the myth.
Because by keeping that rate so low, Joe the butcher, who used to put 5% of his check in the bank every Friday and watch it grow, doesn't see that happening anymore. Therefore, the savings are not occurring. The banks don't have any incentive to loan average Joe money to start a business. So, you know, those things are harmful. But at the same time, if we have an $18.5 trillion national debt, the debt service on that is going to be monstrous if we let the rates rise to 4 or 5%.
Well, we got to figure something out, though. I mean, is there a happy middle ground? Because the fact of the matter is, in my opinion, they printed up $4 trillion. The banks have gotten healthier, but Main Street hasn't. Main Street hasn't seen that money. So why risk the entire U.S. economy just so that a handful of very wealthy people can stay wealthy?
Agreed. You know, we have to understand the sequence in which we do things. We have to drive the debt down first, the national debt. And the way that we're going to do that is get the economic engine going with our regulation and tax policy, and by using our energy in a very efficient and effective way.
But will Washington take that money, even under President Ben Carson, and spend it because they just cannot help it? Both parties have been guilty of this. The more you send it to those D.C. coffers, the more they spend.
Believe me, if there's a Carson administration, that will not happen.
That will not happen.
That will not happen. Some people say I'm cheap, but I say I'm frugal. And I believe that we have a responsibility to treat people's money the right way. Never waste people's money.
Well, my dad was cheap and frugal, so I think I can learn how to live with that.